Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback, Southern California.
What's up, Bears fans? Welcome back. New edition of the Willis Twin Towers. We are your hosts. I'm Jeff, and this is Tim to my right. It's a hard knock life, baby. Hard Knocks is coming to Chicago. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the past iterations of Hard Knocks, but it's been pretty good. I watched a little bit of the Jets training camp last year. It gives us a really nice look into what we're going to be expecting from the upcoming team this season. So, what do you think, Tim? Hard Knocks. This is a big deal. A lot of people have been talking about it. A lot of people have been excited about the possibility, and here it is. It's happening. So, let's get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk more about this later on when we have our guest on. But I was super excited. Honestly, this is something as a fan, I think we all want to see. All of us Bears fans want to see. Behind the scenes, this is the biggest moment, honestly, one of the biggest moments in all of Bears history, because we know this organization likes to keep cards close to the vest. They don't want anything getting out. This is just how they are. George McCaskey has been adamant for years that he wants nothing to do with Hard Knocks. So this is a huge deal for us as the fan to see a little bit of behind the scenes and to get an idea of what these guys are, it's awesome for me. I love it. I love that they're doing this. I think this is the time to do it. As long as this doesn't create some massive distraction, which I don't think it will, because this team is so well cultured at the moment. I think this is huge. It's huge for the fan base. It's huge for the team, because now everybody is going to get a national stage is going to get to see the Bears in a very up close and personal view. And I think that is only going to help the Chicago Bears, and maybe possibly in the future when it comes to free agents and potential guys coming in, as well as coaches, because, if we have the season like we're expecting and hoping for, I don't see Shane Waldron sticking around much longer, because he's going to be getting a head coaching job, and possibly the same thing with Eric Washington in the next few years. So this is a destination that we want people to come to, and this is a tool, in my opinion, to help bolster that. I love it. Love it, Jeff.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. If you guys saw, there were some press conferences today that the Bears put out. Matt Eberflus spoke. Richard Hightower, special teams coordinator, spoke. And a couple of the players, Tremaine Edmonds and DeAndre Swift. There's some interesting stuff they were talking about today. The players both seemed like they were pretty excited for Hard Knocks to come on. Eberflus was pretty excited about it. In his words, he was saying that this is an opportunity for us, because it's going to give people a chance to see what this team is about. We're an exciting team right now, and this is going to give us an opportunity to put that on display. So he was pretty excited.
I thought he sounded pretty excited about it, and he's been a part of this before. And I believe it was in Indianapolis in 2021. So I agree with you. I think he really, really is excited about this. I'm sorry, Jeff. I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
No, you're fine. There's a little graphic here that Aldo put on the screen. That it's the one that they're using for Hard Knocks production of the Bears. And, like I said, guys, this is, Tim put a good point out there earlier that George McCaskey has been he's been on the record in the past before that he does not like the idea of the Bears being on Hard Knocks. He's said before it's good for everybody else, but I don't really think we need that right now, kind of thing. And my question is, at this point, was this something that the NFL was telling the Bears, we're likely going to force you guys to do this, so you better start getting prepared for it now? Or was this something where the Bears were just like, there's a chance that they're going to want us to do this anyways. This is an opportunity for us to get ourselves out there, show our new players, get their stories out there. So I think that had something to do with it too. But I'm curious to know exactly how this came to be, if it was forced on them or if I doubt they totally volunteered, but there had to be some kind of like play back and forth between the NFL and the Bears. I mean, what do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I do think I'm not going to sit here and say that the Bears went out there and advertised like, hey, we want Hard Knocks. But I think Kevin Warren probably had a conversation with George and was like, look, we got to get with the times. Like, this is the way things are right now. If you want to get us out there, if you want to keep building that brand, we want to build a new stadium in the next few years. This can only help that, especially if we are well liked by the entire, world, not just, the National Football League and its affiliated watchers and everything. You want to build this brand. This is the way to do it. Like, HBO is a huge thing. Let's do it. So to me, let's see, what happens here. But I think this is only going to help the team out. And I think too, they probably talked to Matt Eberflus and said, hey, you've done this before. What is there to expect? Ryan Poles, I read a statement from him. He sounded like he was all on board and he was excited for it. I think most of it was just, hey, let's do this thing. This is the time, let's go ahead and do it now. While we've got our rookie quarterback, this kid, he is, and Flus has said this multiple times, he's incredibly comfortable in his own skin. Like, this kid knows who he wants to be. That is the kind of guy you want out there. And what better way to build on his brand than to do this Hard Knocks this year? And I think it's just the perfect time for it. And hopefully it's not a distraction. And I really don't think it will be. But again, this is what I love to see.
So let me just say real quick. First of all, a big shout out and a big thanks to Sean Higgs, who just gave us a $100 super chat. That's really awesome, Sean. Thank you so much for your support and for coming onto the channel. I saw a couple of your comments. The one here about for tissues for tears for the upcoming six-win season. He's saying we need to buy some tissue paper with that money. So Sean, I would be honest with you, buddy. I would be absolutely shocked if the Bears went 0-8 on the road like you're saying right now, and I'd be also shocked if they only won 6 games. Now, the reason I say that is because I understand what the argument will be there. You got a rookie quarterback, you got a bunch of new pieces, you got a new offensive coordinator. The pieces all got to come together and gel and all that. I get it. But at the same time, it's like this is a humongous opportunity for a rookie quarterback that hasn't been in – we haven't had a quarterback in this position, maybe ever, especially not a rookie. So he's got good pieces around him. He's got a great defense that's going to keep the offense – give the offense chances on the field because they're going to get themselves off it. So like I said, I would be surprised if they only won 6 games. And I see what you're saying, Sean. He gets being big fans, but a whole lot of love for a rookie quarterback. Look, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, Sean, this is a rookie that has a lot of promise and a lot of upside and a lot of intrigue around him. And it's been that way for 3 years now since he was at Southern California. He won.
For the record, to be honest, Jeff and I were proponents of staying with Justin Fields up until the trade. So it's not, but we are fans and we are going to support our team and our quarterback, who that is now. But like we said at that time, the tape doesn't lie. The talent is there. It was a matter of the character and how this kid felt about football, and all of those boxes were checked. So we are all on board, and we're going to do everything we can to support this team and the quarterback, even if we don't know them personally. That is what we are going to do as fans.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I agree with you, Tim. And Sean wants to know if he's more like C.J. Stroud as a rookie or Bryce Young. I'm not going to say he's going to be C.J. Stroud because as Greg has mentioned on his podcast, Greg Gabriel on our show, on Barroom Network, and on our show, we've mentioned it before. It is, C.J. Stroud is an anomaly. You don't usually see a rookie quarterback come in and light the world on fire like that. It does happen. It's just so rare. And C.J. Stroud is really the first one in a while that's been quite that good and came out on the scene and was as good as he. Now, Andrew Luck was pretty good too. But he wasn't setting the world on fire with the way his team was playing, the way the Houston Texans were playing last year, and the way Stroud was playing on top of it. So I don't want to compare him to either one of those guys. I will say I would be absolutely shocked if he played as poorly as Bryce Young did last year. But again, look at the situation Bryce Young had around him.
Look at the situation. Yeah, 100%.
So, you know, Scottish says that Sean would swap Dak for Caleb in a heartbeat, or Jerry would swap Dak for Caleb in a heartbeat. And he's probably right about that. I mean, at least
he didn't want to pay Dak.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to say it because Dak's a good quarterback, and it's really hard to just start over like that. Here's the thing: is like if you have something that's working, it's kind of hard to just if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing. And Dak's a good player. Now they've had issues with getting over the hump in Dallas, and I don't want to get too on a tangent here with this, but I see what you're saying as far as maybe wanting to take the younger, higher upside guy like Caleb and wanting to have him more than Dak. But I think we got to pump the brakes on that a little bit right now because he's never played yet. So, and Dak's been a good player in this league, ever since he came in as a rookie. So we got to remember that too. So I see what you're saying, Scottish, but that's definitely one of those things where I don't know if you can say that for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, like I said, this kid has an enormous amount of talent, and everything we've seen about him so far, the way he carries himself, the confidence he has in himself, the way he's not afraid to be in his own skin, comfortable in his own skin. His teammates rave about him. His coaches are raving about him. I would be surprised if he came out and was just a dud right off the bat. I think he's going to have success right away. I don't know that he's going to be lighting the world on fire. I hope so. But like I said, I would be shocked if he didn't come in and we didn't see some of those wow moments right away from year one.
Yeah, I do think that it's going to be closer to, I'm not saying he's going to be CJ Stroud his rookie season, but I do think he's going to be closer to CJ Stroud than he is to Bryce Young. Bryce Young had a really bad situation to walk into. And if we're being completely honest, there was a lot of people believe that CJ Stroud is the better quarterback of the two anyway. And a lot of teams probably would have taken him number one overall over Bryce Young. And we've heard the stories, what's true and what's not true, I don't know. But we heard the stories about the friction in Carolina when they did draft Bryce Young and how, it was believed that Frank Reich wanted CJ Stroud and the owner stepped in and said, no, I want Bryce Young. But regardless of that, there was, like I said, there wasn't a very sound. Bryce Young was the guy of that draft class. There was a lot of argument that people like CJ Stroud more. This year, it was Caleb Williams, and that is from scouts all over the place. That was the guy. He was the best one, and it was obvious. Like, he was the guy. He would have been the number one pick of any team that was drafting number one if they needed a quarterback, in my opinion. But then, obviously, considering most have said so. But my point being, again, scenario was different. Bryce Young had a bad scenario that he walked into. CJ Stroud had a pretty good one. Not great. But the difference, too, is Bryce Young didn't elevate his team when he walked in. CJ Stroud elevated his team when he came in. He got a lot of young rookie receivers and guys who, veteran receivers who hadn't really shown much in their time in the NFL. And he made it all work and brought everybody together. He did a great job as far as elevating his team. We didn't see that from Bryce Young. We did see that from Caleb Williams in college, though. We do know that he was able to elevate his teammates at USC, at Oklahoma. The hope is that he's going to do it here, but I also think that the talent and ability is far greater than what we've seen from other quarterbacks in the past, especially, a lot of early draft picks. Caleb, hopefully, is one of the more generational prospects, which I don't like using the word generational, but I'm just saying it in the matter that he's
one of the better ones we've seen in a long time.
Correct. That's what I'm getting at. So hopefully that is where we're headed. Is to that promised land, and hopefully he's going to be the one to bring this team along and elevate his teammates. That's the hope. So, but yeah, I would say for that reason, I would say that he is closer to CJ Stroud than he is to Bryce Young, and that was just a bad situation for Bryce Young anyway. And the size was a concern for a lot of people, and I was really surprised that he was that high because of that, but. Not saying you can't play with smaller stature, but that was kind of the thought. But yeah,
real quick, I just want to mention Sean. So Sean had a couple other comments on here. I want to mention to you guys too. Also, you can catch Sean and as well as Tooch and Anthony on the Weekend Sports Betting Tips show that comes on right before ours. So catch it every Friday right before our show. Sean's on there as well as, like I said, Tooch and Anthony, and they do a good job, guys. So if you're into betting and you want some help with that, like I said, check in every Friday night right before our show, and those guys do a great job with that. So, and Sean did make a comment earlier about how most rookie quarterbacks walk into situations that aren't exactly ideal. You know, they have lots of holes on the roster, or they're swapping out a coach, or what have you. And typically, I would agree with you, Sean. In the most of the time, that is a big issue for people and for other teams. But in this particular case, I really think they've set him up so well for success. Caleb, that is. I mean, yes, I see what you're saying. You'd be more comfortable if they can to coach. And a lot of people felt that way about Eberflus, but they don't seem to feel that way. Poles doesn't feel that way. The way the defense played last year, his players love him. They talk about him all the time. They love to play for him. They love the way he commands the room. So you can say some things about maybe the way he handled late game situations last season. And there were some other things in game that maybe he could have done better, but we can't deny the defense's turnaround when he took over the defense. We can't deny how much everybody has respect for him within the team and within the organization, I should say. We have to consider all those things. And on top of that, the Bears did win 7 games last year, and at least 2 more of those games were winnable and probably should have been won. The Denver game probably should have been won, and the first Detroit game absolutely should have been won. They completely blew that game. So you're talking about 2 games where you're either 7 wins or 9 wins. And now you're talking about a totally different situation here as far as what we're walking into, a winning team. So I see what you're saying. They had a losing record last year, but I mean, it's hard for me to look at this roster in the past 3 years and say we have not come an awfully long way. And also looking at the pieces around him and saying, you know, he's got a lot to work with here. The one concern that I will say, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, is that there is a little bit of concern for me on the offensive line. I think Wright's going to be a great player. I think Jones, the jury is still a little bit out on Braxton Jones. Can he be a good enough? I mean, he's been good enough, but can he be even better to the point where you're not worried about who you've got on your left side, or are you going to be trying to upgrade there in the future? How healthy can Tevin stay? Can Nate Davis play the way he's played in the past, or is he going to stay regressed like he did last year? There were some issues with him behind closed doors that weren't talked about a whole lot that kind of contributed to his issues, I feel like. So I think he's going to play better, but then also there's this issue at center. We've got Ryan Bates, who they traded for, and then Coleman Shelton, who was signed. There's going to be a battle there between who's going to be the starting center. So like I said, my concern mainly for this team is the trench play. How well will the offensive line hold him, protect Caleb, and how well is the defensive line going to play? How much pressure can they get to keep themselves off the field and to make Caleb's life a little bit easier? So that's just my thoughts on that part of it. But I do see what you're saying. Again, though, guys, I have a hard time looking at this roster and the situation that the Bears have around Caleb and finding or thinking about in the past a different situation with another team that was better than what he has right now, in my humble opinion, as far as rookie quarterbacks are concerned. But that's just my thoughts on it.
No, 100%. 100%. The situation does make a big difference. It really does. And, we could talk about this all day till we're blue in the face. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the players. Coaching is a big factor, but it's going to come down to what the players put on the field. You can give them formations. You can give them coverages. You can give them all of these different things. But at the end of the day, the players have to execute the game plan. So, yes, I will say I have not necessarily liked a lot of what his in-game decisions were. They've been suspect at best at times. But as far as what he's done is developing a culture and bringing guys together, his team never quit on him. Even when things got tough last year and the year before, they never quit on him. So at the end of the day, we have to give him another year, in my opinion. So, let's see what happens. Let's give him his year, and then we'll go from there. But it looks like our guest is here, Jeff. So if you're ready, let's bring her on. You guys have seen her before on our show. She's actually a returning guest. You may know her from her radio show Helmets and Heels. And she's also the Making Monsters host for Windy City Gridiron. I'm reading out loud, but Windy City Gridiron. She's a contributor for them. So if you will, please welcome Taylor to us. Taylor, how are you?
Guys, hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. Got the draft music for you. Well, actually, before we get into all that, all the hard knocks and all the fun stuff there, you and I both, because I remember seeing on your Twitter before the combine and before the draft, you were very high on Rome Odunze, as was I, and that was the guy I really clamored for that number 9 pick. So before we get into anything else, I want to ask you how you're feeling about Rome being a Bear.
I felt like I was like borderline obsessed with Rome Odunze at certain points. I mean, to the point where like on Helmets and Heels, I would go on rants about it. And people obviously in Jacksonville wanted Rome Odunze too, but I was like, no way. Like he's not making it to 17. So you guys got to trade up ahead of the Bears to try and get him. And I don't see Ryan Poles moving. Some people were saying they kind of thought maybe he would take a chance and move. I didn't. I truly was like, there's no way you let somebody like Rome Odunze get by if he's still there at 9. So he's fantastic. He just does everything you want from a wide receiver. And I've said this, and it's a bold take. It's out there in the universe, though, that I truly think he is better than – I like him better than Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, mainly because he just does everything. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has his things that he's really, really good at that may be better than Rome Odunze in certain aspects, and same with Malik Neighbors. But when it comes to – Rome Odunze can do all of it. Contested catches. He's a good route runner. He can be in the slot if you need to. He can be a deep threat if you need to. He can be on the outside. He's quick, like everything you want to see. So when that happened, when Michael Penix went, we were having a watch party here in Jacksonville with some of my Bears group. And when I actually ruined it for myself. Little side story. My phone was ahead of the stream we were watching for the draft. So my phone vibrated and I looked down and it said, select Michael Penix, and I was like, oh my God. And everyone's like, what? And I was like, I don't want to tell you because I'm going to ruin a surprise. And they were like, no, What is it? And I was like, Rome's going to be there. And everyone just went insane. So I am pumped.
Yeah, I was too. You can ask Jeff too. Like the whole time I kept going on and on and on. And Jeff was big on Dallas Turner. That's what he wanted to see the Bears do. And I just, from the very beginning, I was all in on Rome. And for a lot of the same reasons you're talking about, I liked Marvin Harrison too, but there was a lot, aside from the talent and ability, there was a lot of smoke and a lot of things going on. And I didn't think that was something that Ryan Poles particularly would have been interested in. Obviously, he's shied away from those types of things. And the product on the field, I just like Rome better. I thought he did a lot more things well than just the few things that we saw Marvin was really good at. And he was probably better at than Rome, but the contested catch things, the speed for his size, just there was a lot of things that I truly liked better about him as well. And I think that the personality and all those things I gravitated to. Yeah. So I 100% agree with you. I loved it. I think I was almost on the verge of tears. I was so excited about Rome. I really had a man crush on him. I'm not going to lie, but I love the move. But before Jeff gets into some questions, I want to ask you, what kind of stuff are you working on right now? What can our listeners and our chat followers see from you in the future here?
Yeah, so the off season's a little different. If you've listened to Making Monsters at all, it's more so I'll pick a player, usually like during the season, for example, I'll pick a player, whoever's playing well, kind of go from there. And I'll talk to brothers, sisters, moms, dads, former high school coaches, college coaches, QB trainers, or wide receiver trainers, whoever they had during that time. And I'll kind of do a little more in-depth look at getting to know the person. A little different during the off season because obviously we're not playing games for me to pick these players who are playing well. So more so I try and get more analysts around the league. Sometimes it's national people, sometimes it's local people. So I just had Adam Hogue from CHGO Chicago, and he came on. We kind of analyzed some of the stuff that happened in the offseason. I have Courtney Cronin from ESPN coming on next week, and we're going to talk OTAs because obviously the Bears had another OTA today, and it's the last voluntary one before they hit those mandatory camps. So we'll kind of talk about how things are looking with Caleb and Rome and some of the other aspects of the team. So it's more so a look at that. I've done a couple on a few of the players they've drafted. I talk so much Rome, like I would keep doing it honestly if I could. So I didn't do another post-draft analysis of Rome, but I did do one on Austin Booker. I'm working on another one of Amagaji too, and then Torrey Taylor, because these not so much full in depth of ones I would do for making monsters, but more so like mini making monsters of, okay, what can we expect in the NFL from these guys? And the Torrey Taylor one's so interesting to me. I've reached out to a few people to just kind of talk to me about the new kickoff rules and how that could possibly affect maybe if he's doing kickoff and punts, and if a bigger guy like Torrey Taylor would be beneficial in that area. So I'm trying to reach out to some XFL guys to see, to chat about that, and then also Torrey Taylor. So more of that type of stuff to look forward to for the next couple months until we hit full on training camp.
Yeah, that's excellent. I actually did get a chance to see your interview with Adam Hogue and also the Austin Booker video as well. Those were very, very good. And it was good insight as well. You know, Tim and I are actually from Indiana, and Austin Booker's from Center Grove High School, which is around Indianapolis area. So we're pretty familiar with that, and we're really excited about his upside as well. But the one thing I think it's important for us to get to it, you know, since we don't have a ton of time left today. So let's go ahead and dig into the Hard Knocks issue that's going on. I shouldn't say issue, the news of Hard Knocks that we're going to be on the show. It's coming to Chicago. So first of all, before we get into any questions about what that entails, I just want to know what your excitement level is for this and how looking forward to it you are.
So I am an outlier on this, and I already know it. I've seen the comments. I've had a few people agree with me, but I'm personally not a Hard Knocks fan in general. I think the only people personally that it really benefits is, I get it, like the fan wants more insight. You want to see more into camp and the NFL because they get money, and the NFL cares about money. And to me, that's kind of more so what it's focused on. To me, there's a reason that they had to lessen their standards to be able to get into Hard Knocks, because coaches, organizations, they don't want to do it. And that's why it used to be like, okay, you know, you couldn't have a new head coach. You couldn't be you couldn't have been on it for 10 years, and you couldn't be in the playoffs the last 2 years. Well, they've now knocked away the playoff portion of that, and they've knocked it down to 8 years because nobody wants to do it. And I completely get it. I think, to me personally, it just adds another layer, I think, of attention and focus. And I talked about this on Helmets and Heels today, honestly. I think it would personally make more sense to have a winning team on Hard Knocks. Like, have someone who you already kind of know what type of team they are. You know most of the big personalities. So let's take a closer look at maybe some of the players and coaches you don't know as well. But there's not the extra pressure on some of these players that are young and trying to figure out a team. And for me, someone like an organization like the Bears, I genuinely feel they're on the right path. I think they are on the up for the first time in a long time, and not one of the little fake trajectory ups that we've been fooled by, like in 2018. I genuinely think that Ryan Poles, what he's done for this organization, has really started to turn things around. But I would like to be a little more comfortable in the things that are happening. I think that some of the stuff might be a little too much at times. We've already seen criticisms of Caleb Williams, and, you know, one OTA threw people into a frenzy. So now imagine this in camp, if something, you know, if he makes a bad throw or whatever happens. I just personally feel like it puts eyes that maybe shouldn't be there for some people and adds extra criticism and another level of drama is the word I like to say. The Bears have had enough drama this offseason. I'd like to not have a whole reality show on them right now. But I get the people that are excited, because I work every day in the industry. So I get a lot of insight that maybe others don't. And so for people that don't get to, you know, hear from coaches a little more, live in the football world, something like this is fun. So I get the people that are excited about it. I personally, it just stresses me out thinking about it. I can already hear the overreactions of, this is going to be a bust, or Jaquan Brisker is crazy, or Tevin Jenkins is going to get hurt this year, or blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I'll watch, but I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Aldo has a really good follow-up video clip for us here that he's going to play for us all that kind of goes into that a little bit. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's Eberflus talking about the Hard Knocks coming in and what he thinks about it.
And I believe that NFL Films and HBO does an outstanding job of getting their message out, okay, of the team. And we're going to be proud of that message, because I'm proud of these guys.
I'm excited for our players to get a chance to to tell some of their stories, like some of the stories of not only players, like the staff as well.
That's exciting. That's exciting, first and foremost. I seen the news came out, exciting for the fans, the team. That means people want to look at for the Bears. So we're excited for the opportunity.
And I hope that like people around the world get a chance to really get to know our guys, because we got a good culture here, and we have some really good guys.
You know, it shows that, you know, we got something brewing here. You know, everybody wants to see what's going on, and just really being yourself out there, you know what I mean? Not doing too much, but just showing up to work and just showing the world what we're about here, and, you know, the high level execution that we have.
For me personally, I don't really worry about the cameras too much. I got a job to do here every day, so I'm not really focused on it.
You know, you have some hard conversations sometimes, you know, in the building, and those have to be done in private. And what's nice about it is we have a great plan in place for that. You know, everybody who goes on Hard Knocks has editing rights to what goes in and out and all those things, and that's standard. But yeah, we have a good plan.
Do you think Caleb, as a rookie quarterback, is uniquely suited for something like this because of all the focus that's been on him for so many years?
Yeah, I do. I really do. And that's a very good point. And I do think he's suited for that because he's comfortable in his own skin. He knows who he is. And again, he's been out there for several years in terms of, you know, in the media, in the focus, the Heisman winner, all those things that he's done. And he'll be good.
You mentioned.
So I'll say, like, I agree 100% from your stance, and I can definitely see where you're coming from. And we've talked about this a little bit already, but I feel pretty good knowing that Matt Eberflus has been on Hard Knocks. And if I'm not mistaken, DeAndre Swift was on it with the Lions 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So this is something, you know, it sounds like they're comfortable with this and the ability to edit and things like that. I don't think they're worried about it. And I think they're really excited for the team, the players, the coaches, the staff to all be on it. But I definitely see what your stance is, and I understand. And I've been nervous of it as well. But I think the fan in me took over once I found out that we were getting it, because I've been thinking about this for weeks. Like, I can't think of a more compelling story than the Chicago Bears right now. How could they honestly give this to another team? I just don't think it's feasible unless the Bears say absolutely not, which at that point they could still force them to do it because they were one of 3 teams that could be forced. So definitely I let my fan take over. I'm not going to lie. So I do love it. I love the idea of it. But again, I have some of those same fears that you do, and I hope it's not a distraction. But what is there anything you took from these interviews or what they said, anything you liked about that or didn't like about that?
Yeah, there's a couple things I took out of it. Number one, I'm not calling them liars, but you are able to volunteer for Hard Knocks and nobody volunteers. So you were forced into this. You're not going to piss off the NFL and be like, we hate this. Why did you choose this? It's just not going to happen. So of course they're going to be like, yeah, we have the best guys to do this, whatever. So that's part of it, because I think Dan Campbell and the Lions have been the only organization that have been like, come to us. Like, we want to do this. Every other time it's been a very forced situation. Even this year it was between the Bears, Broncos, and Saints. So of course they're picking the Bears. Nobody's going to go watch Bo Nix and Sean Payton's mess that they have right now. The Saints, who even knows, the AFC South in general is kind of a little wonky. But when you have a chance to cover Caleb Williams, who obviously is one of not only the number 1 pick out of the draft this year, but one of the first quarterbacks in college football who was like kind of that gateway into NIL and how NIL works and getting paid this big money. And so there's so many factors to Caleb Williams that goes into this. And so that's one thing I will agree on in that video. I'm not so much worried about how Caleb Williams can handle it, because if you follow Caleb on any social media accounts, you can tell, like, someone posted the thing about the OTA and how he's struggling in OTAs in camp or whatever, and he just laugh-faced at it. Like, he's that type of guy. So I'm not worried that it will get in Caleb's head. I'm more so like, as a whole, it's a pretty young team in general. And yes, they've added some veteran pieces now, obviously, with Keenan Allen and Montez Sweat last year, and now Gerald Everett and Swift too. But you still have it pretty when you look at the offensive line. The majority of them are pretty young. The whole secondary is outside of Byard is all pretty within their first few years. And then Jalen Johnson, of course. So it's a pretty young team. And I would like to just be able to kind of like under the radar develop. And part of this is maybe me being paranoid too, because I've just seen it in the past. Like, the Bears in the last 10, 15 years have not been that team when under pressure has been able to perform. They've been more so the one when they were counted out. They've surprised some people. So to me, I would just kind of rather that. I'd rather slide under the radar a little bit. But I'm also the person who hates primetime games. And I mentioned that to you when we were talking. Like and I was said I'd relate to this to my job. So I obviously work here at the flagship station of the Jaguars. And here, a lot of people obviously are critical of everything. But when one person watches your team on a Monday Night Football and they feel like they know everything about your team, even though they watched one game because they were able to watch that Monday Night Football game, and all of a sudden I'm getting criticized at work of like, oh, your team sucks, they do this, it's going to be that times 10 with Hard Knocks. I feel like it's just going to be everybody being like, either the Bears are going to be amazing and then we're going to have this like crazy hype to live up to with all of these young guys and a young quarterback and a young wide receiver, or it's going to be like, wow, they absolutely suck and everybody's has been fooled the last few months and Caleb's going to be a bust, and then we have to hear about that. I'm not worried about how Caleb will take it. I'm just more so as a team, how is this organization one that historically just hasn't been able to overcome these situations, how they handle it?
Yeah,
I think it's let me ask you a question real quick, Tim, because I thought it was interesting something that Taylor said earlier about how you would prefer to see teams who have had success in the past come on to Hard Knocks. And I've really found that interesting because the way I think about that is a lot of people will say that Hard Knocks is a distraction, right? Well, if you're an experienced team, a veteran team who's had success in the past with winning, how hard is it going to be to distract your team? Whereas a team who's younger and more impressionable, it may be a little bit easier to distract that team. So that is, I see where you're coming from with that, and that is a bit of a concern. That being said, I do agree with your point about Caleb, and I don't see him as the type of person who is going to have any kind of issue with having the spotlight on him. But my question for you is then, what are the other players that you expect to have storylines on them throughout Hard Knocks? Which players do you expect to have the camera on them most outside of Caleb Williams?
So that's the interesting thing about Hard Knocks is I feel like a lot of times it's been the kind of under the radar guys that have gotten the most attention. We always have these like Hard Knocks stars that have come out. And so I've thought about this a few times. There's a few players that first pop into mind because the obvious ones you want to say are Caleb, DJ, Keenan, Rome, maybe even Jalen Johnson, Tremaine, Montez. Those are the ones that people are probably in their head thinking like, okay, these are the guys that they're going to follow because these are the names everybody talks about. These are the names that are on the top 10 lists for different, position groups and whatever it goes. I personally think because just by personality wise, also by how I know Hard Knocks doesn't always focus on those big name guys, I'm more so thinking like a Tevin Jenkins pops in my head. Tevin Jenkins is hilarious. He is a team leader, obviously. The last few years, he's battled a lot of injuries. This is a real prove-it year. He's in a contract year. There's so many elements of Tevin Jenkins this season. And just also, like I said, like the camera presence and how he's kind of goofy. He's this big, like, teddy bear, but also is probably the best offensive lineman on the Bears when he's healthy. He's a name that pops out. Jaquan Brisker is another one that I think pops out to me. Jaquan's another one that's very vocal on social media. He's not a name that I think a lot of people around the NFL talk about a ton, but we have in Chicago because we've kind of seen this like development of Jaquan Brisker and how good he's become in that group. And then now Eddie's gone and he's kind of like this leader in that safety group now in Chicago. And so I think that's another name that pops out. And then also there's always these like long shot type guys. And to me, I could see it being like Tyson Bagent, Austin Reed. Those are, two. Austin Reed is very familiar with Caleb Williams. And he worked with him all offseason. They got him undrafted. Tyson Bagent obviously came in. People were shouting Tyson Bagent to take Justin Fields' job. I wouldn't be surprised if we're still hearing that a little bit after Hard Knocks for him to take Caleb's job because that's just kind of the personality that Tyson Bagent has. So I could see a couple of like those two kind of being in the mix of just personality-wise when it comes to Hard Knocks. And also another one, I keep forgetting his name. Josh Jackson, the wide receiver from USC.
Jackson. John
Yeah.
Jackson.
John Jackson.
Because obviously the connection with Caleb, the Bears bring him into camp. It's some familiar there. You already know Keenan, you know DJ. Rome is such a big personality, so I hope we do see some more of Rome. But I could see someone like that of like, hey, are they going to keep one of these undrafted wide receivers in such a hefty wide receiver group? So some of those names are the ones that pop out to me. Obviously, I think we'll still see glimpses of Caleb Williams because Caleb Williams is what's going to draw them viewers. But I do think with the ability that the Bears have to edit and keep certain things out, they're not trying to give away everything Caleb can do.
Yeah, and that actually makes me think about a couple of things. The Tevin Jenkins one, I definitely see, and I definitely agree. There's a ton of personality there. The John Jackson thing makes a lot of sense because he's friends with Caleb Williams. Maybe they brought him in just for Hard Knocks. I don't know, maybe because he's not doesn't have a lot of production in college at all.
Yeah.
But one, like you said, Barry's going to talk about those big time positions. But I could really see them focusing on the secondary in general because this secondary has a ton of personality. You have Spider-Man, you've got Quan, you've got Jalen Johnson who just got paid. And honestly, what a personality on that guy. Last year, if you guys don't remember, during preseason, he was going around and videotaping all of preseason and training camp on his old camera. My son and me are actually in one of his videos because we went to the Colts-Bears preseason game. It was kind of funny that we were in that video, but yeah, I mean, he's a very larger than life personality. So I could definitely see this this secondary being a huge focus for Hard Knocks, especially after what we saw with the Legion of Boom and that secondary and how that took such a lot of popularity and people talked about that defense and especially that secondary for a long time.
Yeah.
I could definitely see a similar situation to that. But go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say it's a good point, and it could honestly trick people a little bit because I think so much of the offense has been talked about with the Bears of, oh, they got Keenan and Everett and Komet and DJ Moore and now Rome Odunze and Swift, and they haven't even talked about Herbert, and I hate how everybody leaves Herbert out of things.
Don't get me started. It's making me so mad because I love Khalil Herbert.
Me too.
Yes.
And so all of and then obviously Caleb Williams, and then now we just see PFF rankings where they have Darnell Wright and Braxton and Darnell Wright as one of the top tackle groups in the league, and because both of them are in the top 32 to them, and then obviously there's Tevin, and so I think the talk of the Bears has been so much offense. I could see Hard Knocks just being like, we're going to trick all of you guys, and we're going to look at the secondary because they are so many personalities, and you're going to see Kyler and like Jaquan and Jalen, and then obviously Kevin Byard being new to this, but also just the defense in general, because we probably all agree that there should be another edge. But when it comes to Montez Sweat and what he added, TJ Edwards is on every list of top linebackers right now. And so that's probably going to be wrapped up in a storyline too, especially because of the departure with Roquan. So the defense in general, but the secondary, I could see them just surprising people. And then everyone's like, what? We didn't even get to see Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Well, and to go along with that really quick before I go to you, Jeff, sorry, but that, at the end of the day, everybody wants to see and hear about the offense, but it's the Chicago Bears. Like, this is defense. That's what they're known for. And I can't see HBO saying, we're just going to forget about defense and go on the offense here, talk about them. No, everybody wants to hear about the defense. Like, that is the Chicago Bears way, is the monsters in the midway. It's the defense. That's what they want to hear. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that I'm pretty interested to see how that plays out myself, because obviously, like you said, Taylor, there's so much hurrah on the offense and how everything has gone in the offseason with that. But obviously, this defense is, frankly, what's gotten the Bears to this point. That's why they won 7 games last year, is because of how strong their defense was. So I am curious to see how much of that. What is the balance going to be of where the camera's at? Because obviously, like you said, the secondary is very, very good. You've got personalities in there like Spider-Man, like Jaquan, like Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson.
Yeah.
But then also on top of that, they made the trade for Montez Sweat last year, and he totally reversed the entire fortunes of the defense. So I'd be surprised if they didn't have that if they didn't mention that at some point during Hard Knocks and have some kind of at least kind of expound on that a little bit, I guess. So that is interesting.
The revolution of with Montez.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm curious to see how they're going to play out with that. Yeah, there's a lot of storylines here that I'm interested to see how they're going to balance this out, because there's a lot of personalities on this team, and obviously Caleb Williams is going to have a ton of attention on him too. So I'm interested to see that. Absolutely. So.
Oh, and by the way, they have a defensive head coach, and that's another part of it. But then on the opposite end, the way that Luke Getsy, and it felt like such a disaster in getting Shane Waldron, and how kind of eccentric his offenses are sometimes, I could see them wanting to maybe be able to see that too, of what Shane Waldron is going to bring to this offense, because as much as Bears history is defenses and what they've been able to do on the defensive side of the ball, the big storyline is that they've never had that quarterback to throw 4,000 yards, or they've never had that quarterback to throw 30 touchdowns. So I do think and people are saying like this could finally happen with Caleb Williams and Shane Waldron. So I know people are going to want to see that, but I do that's why it will be such an interesting thing to see, like you said, where they really put this focus and who is their star players at the end. It may be someone that we're even like, oh, wouldn't have expected that.
Well, and yeah, another part of this that a lot of people probably aren't thinking about, who's the coach that has the most personality? It's Richard Hightower.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see them giving a lot of space also to the guys that play teams because of Richard Hightower. And there are some storylines with special teams, especially with the kickoff rule now.
Yeah.
So I could see this. I could see this being like 6 episodes. One episode is on Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze and the offense. Mm-hmm. Episode 2 on the defense. Episode 3 on special teams, and then 4 and 5 a combination of everything. I could definitely see them focusing on different parts each episode, just because there are so many storylines and so much to talk about with this. I'm getting myself excited again, but I that's the thing too. Like, I know I'm beating myself up in the head because I know I probably shouldn't do this because I'm hoping it's not a distraction, but I can't help but to be excited for this and see what they're going to come up with. And as a fan, this is what I've been waiting for, is something like this. My teams always suck. So I'm waiting for that moment for my teams to have some success.
Well,
I'm a Bears fan. I'm a Notre Dame fan. Like, nobody ever seems to win for me. So I want to see it. I want to see it now.
Believe me, I'm with you. I think that I might be a little more comfortable if it was like only Bears fans get to watch this. Like, you have to prove your Bears fandom to be able to watch Hard Knocks Bears.
Get out of here, Don Burr.
One thing I would say, I think it's interesting. I see where you guys are coming. The one thing I would say is obviously they do have some input on the editing and the production of it, and what all is put out there, but at the same time, there was an interesting conversation on, I believe it was yesterday, on Waddle and Sylvie. And Sylvie was talking about how his argument was that, yeah, you can say that it's a distraction and all these things. But like my argument is, what's the excuse for the last several years with the Bears, the last 25 years? I mean, what's the excuse for that? Has there not been distractions there, but yet they still haven't been any good. So
yeah. So maybe this helps. It's like it's the reverse. I don't know.
Well, let's hope we can't make it worse right now because we're already doing it.
Well, and Cliff makes a good point here. 1920 draft show is excellent. If this is as good, I can't wait. And I agree with you, Cliff. If this is going to give us an inside look, which it is, if it's similar to how they've been doing things with 1920 football drive, I think the fans are obviously going to enjoy it. The one thing I would say is, like, I do agree with you, Taylor. There was probably some coercion here, or they were probably coerced into doing this more so than volunteering. There was a bit of I was kind of curious about that, like how that went, and obviously we'll never really know, but I do think it's interesting that's the way it went down.
And I saw a comment earlier, Braggs had posted it, and he was like, the Bears got a London game, the Hall of Fame game, and the Hard Knocks, which are literally 3 things that, like, every organization, not saying fans, organizationally wise, hate, because it's extra travel. It's a game that literally doesn't matter. You're not playing any of your starters in the Hall of Fame game. You don't really in preseason, but especially not the Hall of Fame game. It's cool. We're all glad Devin Hester will be there. So obviously you're not taking away from that. But you get these things that are honestly just like extra attention on an organization that maybe sometimes you're kind of like, we're just trying to practice and develop a football team here that hasn't been able to win in a long time, and we want to focus on that. But instead we have to kind of focus on all of these other things that have happened this offseason. And that kind of stuck out to me too. But I will say, to the point of, as much as I don't love it, I do think that, and I mentioned this a second ago, the organization's in a different direction. And this goes to so many different factors, because I think when we talk about the Bears historically. We always joke about the quarterback, but look at the last three. When we're talking about Jay Cutler and we're talking about Mitchell Trubisky and Justin Fields, the Bears gave up draft capital for all three of those quarterbacks, and it ended up not working out. For the first time, what feels like I think ever, we got draft capital. We got this quarterback for free, pretty much. I mean, it's pretty much what it ended up being too. We're like, you take Bryce Young, we'll take a bunch of other things from you, and it landed Caleb Williams. And so from the fact of that, from little things like this, which people wouldn't have paid attention for the Bears the last 10, 15 years, those things are obviously shifting. But they're getting draft picks right for the first time. It's not like after the draft where Ryan Pace, we didn't even have a first-round draft pick for a couple years, and then we're giving up capital for everybody. And then at the end, like maybe he had one good pick, like the first or second round pick was good, and after that it would fall apart and we wouldn't even be able to name the guys he had drafted. Free agency, it was always just maybe one big crazy move like a Khalil Mack or someone like that who we were pumped, which obviously that was a little later. But then everything else was kind of all these mediocre guys who just could have never really pan out. And so finally there's people that we're seeing, there's these players that on free agency are being successful. The drafts are successful. People are talking about both of those being successful. You're getting quarterbacks without having to give up draft capital. You're getting primetime games again, which they do every year, but no team after the amount of losing that they've had recently in the hot mess should have the amount of primetime games they do. But they do because people are noticing that this organization's on the up, which it's just really fun to me to kind of see that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, you mentioned it really well earlier when you talked about having the London game, having Hard Knocks now, having the primetime games. Those are, I kind of thought the Bears might try to use the London game as a means to get out of Hard Knocks because, like, hey, look, we're already going to London for you. Like, Don't make us do Hard Knocks. Like, we're already going out of our way to do this here. But that's a thing. Some teams don't even get that. Who is it? Carolina doesn't have a primetime game this year. Is that who it is? There's teams that don't even have primetime. Yeah. And the Bears have stunk for the better part of 20 years. And we always get primetime games because of the market and because of the fans and because of all of these things. But the difference being now, and you mentioned it really well too with Ryan Pace, and the thing that I would say is the most different now is that Ryan Poles has a patience about how he does it. And he's also very, what's the word I'm looking for? He's very, the way he goes about his business, like
deliberate.
Deliberate is a good, that's a good word for that. He knows what he's doing. Like he has a plan in place. He's not going out there and overpaying. That's the big thing with Ryan Pace was let's overpay Pernell McPhee and overpay this guy. Guys that have never started in their lives, but were good rotational pieces. But let's overpay them, bring them in, and then they never pan out. And you wonder why.
Yeah.
Ryan Poles has a number. He sticks to that number. I'm just talking free agency right now. Like he's very meticulous about how he goes about his business. And we're starting to see the fruits of those labors. Like early on, a lot of people were worried, like, okay, he's gutting the roster. He's getting rid of everybody. And now we're starting to see, here we go. It's all starting to come together. I love the approach. I love the way he's doing things. And I think this is finally the GM. I've been saying, let's crown the guy now. Like he's already one of the best GMs, maybe the best GM in Bears history already. That's where he's at.
I love him. I think that, like you said, his approach to everything, his honesty with everything too. And sometimes people criticize that in the offseason when he was talking about Justin Fields. We want to do right by Justin Fields. Everyone was like, okay, yeah, sure. Then Justin Fields comes out and was like, Ryan Poles was honest. He gave me what I wanted. Maybe that wasn't the best for the Bears because they got a 6th round, maybe 4th round, depending what happens, obviously, with him and Russ. But I think they could have got more draft capital. They just wanted to make sure that Justin Fields was in a place where he could potentially start. And so I love the combination of he's aggressive when he wants to be aggressive. You see the comments of he wanted to trade up for Rome. He started getting a little worried that Rome was going to be gone. And he started thinking about, like, should we trade up? And they were like, be patient. It's okay. So he does have that aggressive side to him, like when he wants something. And some people criticize this. Ryan Bates was his dude 2 years ago, and this year he went and got Ryan Bates. So, like, he has his things that he loves, and he follows through with them. He's honest. He'll tell you how it is, and that's one of my favorite things. I feel like we were always kind of kept on the outskirts of everything Ryan Pace and that organization did. It was kind of like we're going to do this, this, and this, but then they would do the opposite, and then you were kind of confused of what was going on. But then they would trick you because they would, like you said, they'd overpay someone, but make it seem like it was like a big splash, and you'd be like, oh, okay, well, they're trying to fix this. Or they trade up for Mitchell Trubisky. Nobody liked that, but in their head, they thought it was a good idea. And so he would try to do these too aggressive things to be like the cool guy and get ahead of everybody else. And Ryan Poles just sits there. Ryan Poles is like, I'm chilling. I have these guys I want. This goes back to this draft with Austin Booker. And he wanted Torrey Taylor. And a large part, I think, that he wanted Torrey Taylor was because of this new kickoff. I truly believe that. So in addition to Gil obviously being one of the bottom when it comes to punts last year, and the way that Torrey Taylor can flip the field and pin it, fantastic. But I also think he can use him in the kickoff. I also think already in the back of his head, he was like, let's start talking about Austin. Like, I want Austin Booker. We still have a chance to get this kid. We have draft capital next year. And if you watch the 1920 thing, there was clips about that. And he was already talking about Austin Booker at that time. So that's one thing I love about Ryan Poles. When everything he does, he's already thinking about the next thing that he's going to do. And I just feel like Ryan Pace didn't. It was very much like step one, let's do this. Step two, let's do this.
I was just going to say, it's a chess, not checkers approach. And he just, he's like Tim said, he's been very deliberate, very calculated with his moves. Ryan Pace, it's not like the Pace era where it's like the worst draft picks we've got with Poles so far have been like Dominique Robinson, something like that, or maybe Zachary Thomas, who was picked up off the practice squad a couple years ago. But now, you look at Pace and some of his worst drafts, it's like for every Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson, you had a Shea McClellan, you had Adam Shaheen, so it's like, I totally agree with you there. The process is so much better. Yeah. So before we run out of time, we got a couple of questions I want to get to here in the chat from a couple of people. John, first of all, has the comment that DJ showing up every day of OTAs and being captain of the team, he's seen enough to lock him up long-term. He'd give him a 2-year extension tonight. And look, John, I've been on the record saying for the last couple of weeks, I think DJ is going to have an enormous season. Everybody's talking about Rome. Everybody's talking about Keenan Allen coming in. But I feel like a lot of people are forgetting about DJ Moore and the fact he had 1,400 yards last year. The guy is a damn good receiver, and they're going to get him the ball. They're paying him good money. So I agree with you. I think there's a good chance he could get extended. I'm curious to see when that could happen. What's your thoughts on that, Taylor?
Yeah, I agree. I would give, if I was Ryan Poles, I would be on the phone with DJ already trying to work up something. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they're not, because, and that's what, I had a conversation with someone here in Jacksonville, because they are not Trent Baalke, their GM fans whatsoever. But he was kind of mocking the Bears at one point and was like, why would you guys why would you draft like Rome Odunze if you already had Keenan and DJ? And why would you go get Gerald Everett if you already had Cole Kmet? And I was like, well, some GMs think beyond 1 year, and that is what Ryan Poles is doing. So to me, Keenan Allen, obviously, year 12, he's getting a little older. We're not expecting him to be on this team. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if even beyond this year. To me, he's the perfect guy to kind of be around someone like Rome and help develop Rome and get ready so he can just kind of unleash in year 2 type of thing. But to me, DJ Moore is someone that you want on this roster for the next 5 years. Like, give me DJ for the next 5 years, no problem, and I'd be happy with it. The wide receiver contracts are crazy. We've seen them recently. But I think that someone like him and what he's capable of doing, we see the way he is, and we talk about Rome with contested catches, but some of the catches that DJ makes, you're just like, I have no idea how he came down with that ball. And then also, I think the big thing with him too is those yak yards. People kind of mocked it last offseason because they were like, oh, Justin threw a 5-yard pass and DJ went 50. Good. Why wouldn't you want that out of your wide receiver? And he's one of the best in the league when it comes to that. So I agree completely. Lockdown DJ, I would love to have him here for a while. And I do think he still will be our yards, like our leader when it comes to receptions and yards this year.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's funny you said that too, because Tim and I were talking about that last year. I was in one of the shows we had. I swear, DJ breaks multiple tackles every time he catches the ball. He's picking up yardage afterwards. It's every single time without fail. So we got one more question here. Let's get to. Go ahead and read it off, Tim, for us so we can get to it.
Question. This is from Cliff. Cliff is on our show every week. He's always chatting in with us. So he's got a question for all of us. He said, "What's better?"
Appreciate you, Cliff.
Yes, Cliff. Thank you. What's better, a couple third round comps or keeping Ian Cunningham? I'm
Well, for
saying
the Bears,
keep
it's keeping the
Cunningham, no
keeping
doubt.
Cunningham.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say
He
it's
grabbed
not
the phone from Ryan Poles, said, "No, sir, we are not making a trade."
Yeah, I love Ian Cunningham. And I think that there's going to be a point where we lose Ian Cunningham, and it's going to be unfortunate. I do hope at least another year or two he stays. Obviously, they just gave him an extension because that's their like trying to cohese him into being like, just give us a little more time, because he's fantastic. And to me, I also, going back to the draft, I think the Bears are in the spot now where previously the first couple years of Ryan Poles' tenure here in Chicago, obviously we were like, the more picks the better, because you kind of had to throw some darts. There were so many holes in the roster that there was too much, like that you just really didn't have the money or the draft picks to fill everything that they had to do. Now you just saw what they did with 4 draft picks this last year, technically 5 with the Austin Booker one, and you still feel like your roster has majorly increased. So the one thing that you have to kind of start thinking about now are these upcoming contracts, because there's going to be guys. We have now a rookie contract with Caleb, so that one at least isn't on your mind, but DJ Moore is on your mind. A lot of the secondaries coming up. Tevin Jenkins, what's going to happen with him if he plays a full healthy season? Is he worth one of these top, tackle, guard, whatever he's playing this season, money? And so there's some other guys that are going to be coming up that you have to talk about. And so that's where those picks maybe come in handy if you start having to figure out if you're going to pay these guys or not pay these guys. But right now, for the here now, I think the Bears are in the spot where they are pretty comfortable. And like I mentioned many times, on the way up. So having a guy like Ian Cunningham to be able to kind of work his magic, him and Ryan Poles, and do their thing and bring on what they're able to do, and just kind of do the final few check marks. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I go from this roster from top to bottom, there's still some holes and like maybe some depth pieces that you need to work on. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, edge probably be a big one. I don't think anybody would argue a 3-tech, another guy like that, like a solid 3-tech on the roster. But aside from that, it feels like a center. I would say maybe a lot of people would still say that.
Too.
Yeah.
Safety depth, I feel like, would be good.
Yes. Yeah. Safety depth is a good one too. Cause we're not quite sure what we're getting out of Byard either. But, but aside from that, and look 3 years ago at the list of what we needed on this roster to improve and to what it's been now 2 years later. So, and that's what Ian Cunningham and Ryan Poles do. So to lose someone like that, I think would be big. But I do think that if it's another year or two, there is a way to depart and it still be like, we'll be okay.
Yeah, just the last thing I was.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead, Tim, and I'll make my point.
I was just gonna say maybe they'll find a way to go ahead and make like a president of football operations, and Kevin Warren just becomes the CEO. Ryan Poles becomes that president. Ian Cunningham becomes the GM, and Ian Cunningham makes all the football decisions.
We're just making all these positions.
I don't see that one.
Listen, it's already happened. They made an assistant GM, so let's. So I'm only hoping that they do this.
The McCaskies just also don't have the money.
Yeah,
that's what
I was just gonna say, on top, I agree with you guys both on that. It's a matter of, first of all, Cunningham's going to want control of the personnel, but so is Poles. So I doubt he's just going to relinquish that. But the one point that I would make, the final point I'm going to make about Cunningham, from here, the one thing I'd say about him is that he had a chance to take over the GM job in Arizona last year, guys, and he passed on it. So the one thing I would say about Ian Cunningham is, I don't think he's just going to walk away for anything. He's going to go into a situation he feels comfortable with, that he wants to go to. Yeah. So I do think it's going to happen eventually. Like you said, Taylor, it's just a matter of when and how. Yeah. So, and what team.
Yeah.
So anyways, guys, go ahead, Taylor. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's a good point, because I don't know if Ian Cunningham's going to want to go to something right now where he has to build it completely from the ground again. But most of the teams that aren't there aren't firing that position and looking for it. So it's a weird thing, and hopefully that keeps him here a couple more years.
I hope so. It'd be nice to see. It definitely was a big part, instrumental in a lot of the things that we've done. I'm sure he's a big part of Caleb's evaluation as well. So anyways, guys, like always, we appreciate y'all being here. We're out of time, but again, thanks Taylor for coming on and being with us today. You guys can follow her at Taydoll1010XL. Like we said, she's with the flagship program for Jacksonville Jaguars radio. And also she's a contributor for Windy City Gridiron. I'm sorry. You can follow me and Tim. I'm at _Jeff Willis, and he is at Tim Willis 24. You can follow Aldo at Barroom Network. Please give the video a like, guys, and join us again next week as we're on every Friday. Once again, Taylor, thanks again for coming on, and bear down, guys.
Yeah, bear down. Thanks, guys. Oh,
The
yeah.
Willis Twin Towers podcast is a Barroom Network production. Jeff and Tim Willis are the co-hosts and co-producers. Aldo Gandia is executive producer. Music is licensed from Pond 5. Any copyrighted material used was done under the Fair Use Doctrine for commentary, criticism, and informative purposes. All of our programming is available in audio-only format by subscribing to the Barroom Network wherever you download podcasts. Videos are archived on YouTube.